this creeping, silent epidemic that is out there, unfortunately, for our pets, that is so, it should be so simple to treat. But unfortunately, just like for us, it's something you need to really dedicate yourself to for a period of time to know that then, you're giving your dogs all those extra years of freedom from pain and have them as a puppy again.
Welcome to the Call the Vet Show, the podcast that helps pet parents understand and optimize the health of their furry family so they can live the full and happy life you want for them. And here's your host, veterinarian Dr. Alex Avery.
Hello, kia ora. Welcome to episode 133 of the Call the Vet Show. God, those episode numbers keep climbing, and I'm really delighted that you've chosen to spend some more time with me if you've listened to these episodes before. And if you're new here, welcome along. This is the podcast, as the intro says, for all pet parents who want the best for their pets. And my aim, my hope, is to be able to bring you actionable information, detailed information, unbiased and evidence-based information that you need to make the best decisions for you and your furry family member, no matter what life throws their way, whether it's trying to keep them healthy in the first instance or tackling whatever diseases or injuries or other challenges come their way. So with that in mind, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button on whatever platform or app you're listening to this on so you don't miss out on any of the future episodes just like this one. And today I'm talking to the wonderful Dr. Carolyn Taylor about a topic that really is dear to my heart, and one that I often joke about that I end up talking about in every single episode, no matter what the topic is. It really is that important. And of course, we're talking about weight. We're talking about being overweight and obese, but the problem is not just those dogs, those cats that are obese. It's any individual that is carrying even just a little bit too much weight. The impact can be huge. It is generally underestimated, underappreciated. And if I have one tip, if I could only share one tip with pet parents, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter what your pet is, it would be concentrating on keeping your pet their healthy weight is the single biggest thing that you can do as a pet parent to keep them as healthy as possible. Now, you might think that that sounds like I'm over egging the situation, but as we'll hear with Dr. Caroline Taylor, the impact on your pet can be absolutely huge.
Here's this episode's expert interview.
Dr. Caroline, it's a real pleasure to be talking to you today about a passion of mine. And I kind of joke that every single episode I end up talking about weight issues. It's really that important. But despite that importance, it's not maybe the sexiest or the most interesting topic from the outside looking in. So I'd love to know kind of how you developed your interest in the area of obesity and weight loss, and the journey that so many of our patients that we see in clinic need to go on or are currently going through.
Just like so many vets in practice, a lot of the time nutrition is sort of added on as an afterthought of when you've come to the decision of, what your diagnosis is. And by the way, even whether it's really significant disease like kidney disease or pancreatitis, where diet is key to ongoing health, it's also added as an afterthought, or maybe go and speak to the nurse about it. But actually, the level of knowledge is it's often not necessarily, in terms of managing obesity, it's not necessarily all the intricate knowledge you have of the diet, but in general, all that. I actually did a course with Liverpool, who most of the time they concentrate on obesity in horses, which has massive consequences in equines because of the cause of laminitis, which can be career-ending and life-ending, unfortunately. Sure, yeah. So I was doing some work with them, and it was that link, which is what we do in practice all the time, that link between disease and behaviour, and how it's not just the behaviour of the dog begging, it's the behaviour of the human and how you react to that begging. And things like, an animal's behaviour can change dramatically. If you put a cat on a diet, it will start, instead of being a grazer and eating when they want to, they start coming to you and asking for more food. It ultimately changes the behaviour of the animal in front of you. And often it's your reaction to that behaviour. If the cat comes to you and you then give them some food, you'll reinforce that behaviour. Whereas if you pick up a toy and play with your cat for 5 or 10 minutes and have a different type of interaction, then yes, they might still want to come to you, but they'll come to you more for attention rather than just for food and for cupboard love. So, yeah, that's where I started off, really.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge, isn't it? They're so good at training us to give them food, or to show our affection for them, and we show our affection so frequently through food. We think to be a good pet parent, I've got to give my dog these treats, or I've got to feed my cat whenever they meow at my feet. And we have this association with food being love, which is often where the problem starts.
Exactly, and it's separate, and it's not wrong. And the human animal bond for me is a big part of the reason why I became a vet. And to celebrate that, within practice, and in COVID, that connection that I have with not only the animal but then the owner, and being part of that triangle of care, suddenly became quite damaged, because we couldn't have that same relationship with the person who were maybe speaking to the owner on the phone, or may not have been as much of an impact for you guys over there in New Zealand, because you manage things very differently. But for us, I know I still work in one practice where it's still not the norm for the person to come into the consult room. We do a lot of our consultations in the waiting room or outside, and then do what we need to do with the animal, and then take them out again. And so that relationship within COVID became a little bit more strained. And so I guess I was sort of craving that interaction with the human behind the animal as much as anything. And it was some of the people that I was seeing, I just suggested, instead of, I saw that they were slightly overweight, and instead of just saying, oh, well, yeah, maybe feed them a bit less and give them, these treats instead of, what you are giving, sort of invited them to come along for a Zoom chat every couple of weeks. We had a few of us all together. So it wasn't just that me and them. It was in a group situation. It was really empowering for those people to not only share their worries and their thoughts with me, but with other people as well. And to reinvigorate, yes, it's absolutely right that you love your dog, 110%, but actually working out how you can, particularly with a dog that's overweight, and so many are, over 55% in the UK, and even be up to 60% in the US now. And a lot of people come and say, oh, well, yeah, my dog's a little bit overweight, but not as much as that dog, as if that's an excuse that they don't necessarily have to do anything. But it's sort of empowering them to say, actually, if you keep your dog lean and healthy, they're going to be less likely to have disease. They're going to be more likely to live a longer life. Number one, they can live up to 2 years, 2.5 years longer, just from eating less. Obviously, especially at the moment, you think, oh, where can we scrimp and save? Maybe you should be investing in a higher quality diet, or a diet that's suitable for weight loss, but feed less of it. You'll actually be saving money in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly on vet bills and things like that.
Yeah, well, the ongoing cost. So it used to be, I guess, thought that if we can be a bit chunky, and the fact that it's cute and it doesn't actually do very much, but we know that. You say there 2.5 years of extra life, that as a percentage of a dog's life is massive. But on top of that, you're getting a higher proportion of disease-free life as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because what kind of things, just kind of from the basics, what kind of things do we see increasing with dogs who are just overweight? And we're not necessarily talking about morbidly obese, just carrying
no, this is see, when we look at the studies that showed 2.5 years greater life, it wasn't those dogs that were morbidly obese, 9 on the body condition score scale. They were only slightly overweight, so 6 or 7 out of 9 body condition score. Body condition score is a really good way to sort of start. Okay, what body condition is my dog? Because that it's subjective, it's not subjective, and you can then judge how they're getting better, not just on the weight on the scales. But disease risk, I mean, the big one would be arthritis and managing canine arthritis, not only once it's diagnosed, but prevention. People think it's because of the extra wear and tear on the joints, the extra weight that they're carrying. But we know now, both from human research and in dogs, that it's the pro-inflammatory effects of subcutaneous fat, excess fat in the body, that leads to this pro-inflammatory state. And so I've seen dogs lose 5-10% of their body weight, so not a huge amount, but they can actually then reduce the amount of painkillers they're on because they don't need them anymore. Yeah. It's not just because of that extra weight bearing down the joints. So arthritis is the big one, and arthritis is a really common, particularly in our Labradors, black coat retrievers, pugs, Springer Spaniels. All these dogs can have a risk of developing obesity, but it's also really common for them to develop arthritis as well. Lots of other diseases as well. Diabetes, much more common in dogs that are overweight or have been significantly overweight in their life. Things like urinary tract disease and stones forming in female dogs is quite common, and more at risk if they are overweight. So acute pancreatitis is another common one. And again, there's different reactivities of these, inherited risk of certain diseases. But all of those inherited risks you can reduce by just keeping your dog at a lean and healthy body weight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd almost be here all day if we were listing all of the problems that increase with obesity, because it isn't just sitting there doing nothing and adding weight to the dog. Like you say, it's incredibly active. It encourages inflammation everywhere. Cats are the same: diabetes, skin disease, arthritis. And I think we're seeing absolutely a lot more maybe breeds of dog than traditionally thought of as prone to arthritis, because it has become such a big problem, 55%. And I guess as well, when we're thinking about body condition scoring, which is the way of kind of assessing the shape of that individual dog rather than relying on the old fashioned charts, which say a Labrador should be between X and Y kilograms. And that means we always, if we're bumping up at that top end, it doesn't matter if they're a small Labrador, they're still all right.
Well, these days, I mean, people ask me all the time in on Facebook, what's the normal weight of my dog? And I'm like, it's a Labrador. And I'm like, well, one, males and females can be completely different.
Yeah.
Two, a Labrador can be completely different weights according to its build and its size.
Yeah.
It's quite rare now in the UK to get a dog that is one breed. It's not a crossbreed. So then which chart do you look at?
Yeah.
There's often a really big range. So an average Labrador can be between 23 and 30 kilos. So if it's in that range, is that normal? It's really inaccurate. The best way of looking is really to know what your dog was when it was about a year and a half old. It's probably or just before neutering, and it's probably about their ideal weight.
Yeah.
Now, the problem comes when you've got a puppy that's grown a little bit, that's been a bit too chunky, and this is a really serious issue, because not only as they're growing, are they growing obviously all their skeleton and their muscle, the number of the fat cells in their body increases in number. So it's therefore they've got more fat cells in their body to store. So they're like a super storer of the excess energy. So it can be really, really difficult. And in lockdown, the most recent PDSA study on, health in animals in the UK, they do a huge survey each year, showed now that 37% of dogs of a year of age are overweight. So those dogs that, it used to be about 25%. So even at a year old, and you think, being overweight is an old age problem, as dogs are slowing down, but it's not. So I think it's really, I still see a lot of puppies not getting enough nutrition as they're growing, but equally, it's not enough to just tackle as they're older. And if you have got a young dog that you think might be overweight, then certainly, tackle it as soon as you can, because otherwise you're just storing up problems later on in life. Those disease risks, any disease that your dog gets, just from, whether it's having a lump off or having to have orthopedic surgery, much, much more difficult for rehab and convalescence if they're overweight. I'm sure partly because of this pro-inflammatory state that happens, but also just physically, if they're can't walk on one leg because of the surgery, and then they can't get around very easily, it's much more difficult then for them to recover well. Even all their musculoskeletal system, the balance. If the muscles aren't working properly, there can be fat deposits within the muscles as well as around the joints and within the tendons and ligaments, and that can all reduce the ability for those to work properly. Prevention is definitely better than cure.
For sure. So I guess that segues really nicely into, we've got this big problem. We know how common it is and how many people need to take action, and I'll leave links in the show notes to the body condition score charts, and there are various videos. I think I've got a few as well. It's something that people can learn to do themselves.
Yeah, but it's really important to have it normally goes from 1 to 9. You do aim for sort of 4 and 5, but really there is the knuckle test, which takes just a couple of minutes to explain. You hold your hand out in front of you and have it flat, and then if you feel the knuckles in front of you, and that's how you should be able to feel your dog's ribs. If you put your hand into a fist and then feel the knuckles, you see there's not very much flesh then over those knuckles. That's a little bit too thin. And then if you hold your hand out in front of you, palm facing up, and then you feel just at the base of your fingertips, that little bit of fat and flesh over the top of your dog's ribs like that means they're a little bit overweight. And if you feel in the centre of your palm, as in you can't feel really any ribs at all, they're significantly overweight. So that's a really quick, sort of easy, it's not being tested, but it is a really good rule of thumb.
Yeah, it's low tech, it's cheap because it's free. And it's a way to monitor your dog as well. So, do that, go home, do that now if you've got your dog next to you, but do it repeatedly every month, every couple of weeks, or, whatever it is, just so that you know that you're not getting that creep. So we've got a dog. Yeah, we've got a dog or a cat who is a bit overweight. What's their step? What should they do? What do we need to concentrate on? I guess here I'm thinking I hear a lot of, well, I'll increase their walks a bit, and that should do the trick. And I'm giving them a bit of toast in the morning at the moment, so I'll just remove that. Is it that simple, or are there other things that we really need to focus on, and without focusing on them, we're kind of destined to failure, if you like?
Yes, it depends slightly where your dog is starting from. Because if you think, oh, well, I'll just increase the walk slightly and stop giving the odd extra, but maybe your partner feels sorry for your dog, so gives them extra. Maybe don't secretly feel a bit sorry for yourself, for your dog, and give them, oh, they're on a diet, so I'll just give them this little bit of extra thing because they feel guilty. And they've done a little bit more work. It's a bit like us if we go to the gym. You normally overestimate how many calories you've burnt off, and then your body automatically tries to replace those calories immediately by eating a Mars or a packet of crisps. And unfortunately, the estimate that the number of calories you or your dog has done massively is overestimated, so that you end up consuming a lot more than you need. You don't need, really, you need to be keeping the diet the same or less than. And I think this is a mistake a huge number of people make. They reduce the diet slightly, might maybe increase the amount of activity or exercise, but they're increasing the walk by maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then maybe aren't that consistent with that, and then don't actually change the diet significantly enough to actually make a difference. Because what most people do, if their dog is overweight, that's happened over years, months or years. Okay, we all know, if they've maybe you've been on holiday and they haven't done as much, they can gain weight really quickly in a short amount of time. But in general, that extra, and they haven't actually been, people say, well, they're not overeating, I'm feeding what it says on the bag. But if they are overweight, they're eating more than they need to. So either the food you're feeding is too rich, too calorie dense for your dog. And unfortunately, dogs are really, really efficient at exercising. So the increase that you get from adding in that extra 5 or 10 minutes walk, 2 or 3 times a week, isn't going to be enough to significantly increase the amount of calories they're using. And so really, it is frustrating because a lot of vets or veterinary nurses are under the impression that it's all the owner's fault, when there's actually a huge number of other risk factors involved: environment, injury, not only to your pet but to yourself. I saw a Labrador a couple of months ago saying, "I put on, a little bit." It wasn't really even aware. Oh yeah, I injured my knee on the rugby field, so I couldn't walk them the same. It's often, yes, a change in exercise can have a significant impact on how many calories they're taking in. And the other thing is, people could say, oh, well, my dog eats exactly the same as he did, 3 years ago. But actually, if your dog is aged by 3 years, they may need significantly less calories. They may be going on the same length of walk, but they're not running off like they used to. They're plodding along next to you. And activity trackers can be really, really useful. Not just the ones that you get on your phone that you can follow around and see what route you did on your walk, but the activity trackers that you put onto the dog's collar. We've got PitPat over here in the UK. I think FitBark is quite popular. They've actually looked, FitBark, it's really interesting to look at the website and see some of the data that they've pulled from the activities monitors of all these different dogs. And predictable changes like, if there's dogs with arthritis, they do less activity. But equally, things like, if your dog has skin disease, if your dog has an allergy, they do less activity than than a normal dog. And I thought, that link between skin disease, obesity, and how that's linked. So if your dog suddenly develops an allergy, they might be doing less activity than they did. So therefore, their calorie amount, their food, I'm feeding them the same as I always did. That over time, over 6 months, 12 months, it's not that dogs gain a lot each year, but it might be 1 kilo each year. If your dog is a 10-kilo dog, in 10 years, they'll be 10 kilos overweight, which is a reality. Yeah. And so unless you tackle it, as soon as you find out, often people reduce the diet a little bit, or maybe the treats a bit, But that really just gets your dog back on an even keel, and they stop gaining weight, which is better than continuing to gain weight. But equally, that's often not quite enough to get them back and reduce their risk of that sort of pro-inflammatory state.
Yeah.
So we need to often cut the calories. So, I mean, if you think about in humans, we've got normally an average calorie intake is between 2,000, 2,200 for women, up to 2,500 for men. But if you need to go on a weight loss diet, you're looking at a significant reduction of that to about 1,700, 1,800 calories over, 3 or 4 months. So that's a significant reduction. It's not enough just to reduce the treats, essentially.
Yeah.
It's often that you have to be, look at it, not only what diet you're feeding, but how much of it. And also, if you don't know how much you're feeding, even just that's why I always start off with just asking people, okay, what are you actually feeding? Not just, a handful. It wasn't myself. I was speaking to a veterinary nurse at a conference, and she was saying, oh yeah, we had I'd had them on this weight loss diet for 3 months and they just weren't losing weight, and there was a real problem here. And both owners, each owner would come in differently, and they were both really on board. They were saying, oh, how much are you feeding? Just a handful each day. And she eventually she got them both in to see, and just to say, well, what do you do when you feed your dog? And basically, the lady had hands like this size, and the guy had hands like this big. And so they just looked at each other and looked at their handfuls of food. This is what I'm feeding. And then the penny dropped. They were both doing the same thing, but because they weren't weighing the food or actually giving it the same amount, it was... It suddenly they realised why it wasn't making a difference.
Their dog was always hoping that it was dad's turn for feeding time that day. So I guess having that consistent, knowing what you're feeding, and that's being honest about all of the extras, because the other thing that I think we'll say as well, I only give them half a cup of biscuits. That's all they're getting, but we're thinking at meal times, not those, the treats on the walk or when we're on the, doing training for the younger dogs or whatever it is.
Well, it's things that you don't think about, things like, oh, well, what supplements are you feeding? Because often those supplements might be, oh, look, they've got, it's got joint this or that's, green net muscle or whatever else in. But actually, when you look at those treats, the percentage of the supplement is 0.01%, which you'd have to feed, loads of them to actually get the benefit, and actually it's a lot of calories that you don't necessarily need. And the best thing you can do if your dog has got bad joints is get them to lose weight. Whatever supplement, no supplement in the world is going to do as good a job as getting them to lose weight. So yes, some of the foods that you can get now actually have, complete diets, have the joint supplement within them. And people might be giving, we're giving them this omega-3, oil. Oil can be really, really high in calorie. So yes, if you've adjusted everything else, but it's not just the sausage roll or the biscuit or the kitchen scraps. It's often things that you're giving your dog as a benefit. We won't dental chews. I'm sure you've been there, done that. Do they actually talk to a dental assistant? Do they actually do any good? No.
Dogs love them as treats, but do they do any good for the teeth? For the majority of dogs who bite them into big chunks and swallow them, no. But they're adding to the problem, absolutely. And so when we're thinking about diet choice, so we've got our standard diets, and I guess we've mentioned reducing the amount of their current diet, but unless we're dealing with only being slightly overweight, we then delve into the world of light diets and specific prescription, what we would call prescription weight loss diets. That's a bit of a minefield. What help unpack to a bit. What does light mean, and why maybe the prescription weight loss diet's the way to go, or what's the
In terms of diet, I mean, diet choice is, whole other kind of worms, wet, semi-moist, raw, kibbles, freeze dry, it's huge. But I will hopefully reassure people that the prescription diets from the big three companies are highly effective for weight loss. They are also highly beneficial for your dog for a huge number of reasons, because they are very carefully balanced. And the main thing is that in terms of weight loss prescription diets is that they actually have a very high level of protein, because one thing that we want to avoid, and this goes for even just adult maintenance diets, standard adult diets that you get off the shelf, and even light diets. The light diets are going to be slightly higher in fibre, slightly lower fat. They're going to be better than, but please, if you have a dog that's overweight, don't feed them an all-age diet, because essentially the all-age diet is suitable for puppies. So therefore it's a growth diet. So do not, and a lot of people will buy the diet according to the lifestyle they want their dog to have. I want the dog to be running around the park. I'm going to get an active dog diet. Actually, looking at the senior diets can be a really good. They're usually similar to the light diets because they will be slightly lower in calories, lower in fat significantly, which can help if your dog is slightly overweight. But if your dog is anywhere over 7 out of 9 body condition score, it can take as a minimum 3 months to get them back to an ideal weight. More likely 6 to 12 months. And if you're feeding a much smaller amount, you often need to cut the food quite significantly of the sort of standard diets. Then unfortunately what happens, because they're balanced to be fed for a certain amount, if you cut that amount down, they'll actually be not only low on protein, but also, which they need obviously an amount each and every day, they can also be much lower on the essential vitamins and minerals. And so over time, you might not notice anything to begin with, but over 3, 6, 12 months can mean that their skin isn't shiny, or they can be more prone to other disease. And there isn't really a blood test that you can do to see if they've got low zinc or low iron or those sorts of things, but it can just make them. So that's where the weight loss diets, they're much higher in fibre usually, so that can help with gut fill to help keep your dog full. Most importantly, they're actually higher in protein, which it's the protein in the diet that helps keep your dog not hungry. So it helps to dampen down that desire to eat more. So if you're feeding a sort of standard diet, they're often not quite as high in protein. You want to be, on terms of a dry matter, sort of 25 to 30% protein. And the standard diets are not going to be able to fulfill that need. So therefore, your dog will start showing more signs of hunger than they did before. The problem is, with some of these specific weight loss diets, is they come in wet usually and dry, but the wet foods tend to be a lot more expensive than the dry food. And then you sort of can feel that guilt of feeling, oh, it's just a bit of a boring diet because of the high fibre. It can affect the palatability of the food. Some dogs that are overweight are quite picky. And that's part of, oh, well, they won't eat that, so I need to give them this. Someone I was working with was, a little bit, but weren't, and then they told me, yeah, well, we have to put a little bit of mince, fried mince on the top of the food that we're giving, because otherwise they won't eat it. And you're like, well, yeah, of course, they prefer it when there's that, or whether it's fresh chicken or whatever else. But actually, these diets, you can actually unbalance by adding the extra protein, not because the extra meat on top, not because you're giving that extra meat, but because then the proportion of the vitamins and minerals and those micronutrients would be proportionally reduced, and so they particularly important in overweight puppies and younger dogs, because their needs of the essential vitamins, because they're still growing even though they're overweight. Absolutely, I would recommend working really closely with your vet if you've got a puppy that you think might have gained a little bit more than ideal in those sort of first 6 to 10 months. So what you can do, if you think you're worried about that sort of being boring, is you can use your treat allowance, which with any diet you're giving can be up to 10% of the diet. You can actually use that treat allowance for enriching your dog's diet, so with fresh fruit and vegetables, and things like blueberries, strawberries. Okay, here's people think, or even carrots, they're really high in sugar. Well, yeah, they have got some fructose within them, but they've also got lots and lots of water. So actually the percentage of the fructose is much less than, say, if you gave Bonio or, that dental chew or whatever else, because the dry food, the percentage of the calories is much, much higher. I mean, some of the it goes without saying in terms of, can't I home cook for my dog? And you can now get tons and tons of recipes online and that claim to be nutritionally balanced, but there have been studies done by professionals within the industry creating these recipes, and 5 different people creating the recipe will actually produce a diet, if they've used a slightly different amount of this or that would be unbalanced. So they've analysed the different people creating these diets, and unfortunately they're not all the cut up to be in terms of ongoing diets. And you might say, I'll use this recipe one day and this other recipe one day. Unfortunately, it's often the same nutrients that are low, so it might well be the zinc, the selenium, the copper. Those are common nutrients that are usually in low levels. So even if you're mixing up your recipes, you will commonly still get those same deficiencies coming through.
Yeah. And especially when you're giving less, that you're more likely to, they're more likely to manifest themselves. And, we do from time to time see, I was talking the other day to one of my colleagues about a puppy that had rickets. Because they were, that was a slightly different situation, but we are seeing some of these diseases that we should never really be seeing, and there's very little excuse for. But even just that, not quite as healthy, not as they should do, can't quite put your finger on it. There's not a blood test, but that is the risk. I completely agree with the treats. I think it's almost important to have, to give people permission, and for you listening to this, to have a treat allowance, because we, going back to the very beginning, saying food is love, and we need to separate that, and we need to play with our pets, we need to show them attention, and they love that more than the food. But because we have that desire, we need to have permission, and we're going to give treats. So give the right treats, and there are treats that are perfectly acceptable, like you've said there.
Green beans, courgette, cats will have slightly softened, zucchini. Is it in your language?
I don't know what language I speak sometimes. I get confused.
But slightly softened sprouts can be really good. Obviously, other thing that you need to make sure that it is. So things like when you are giving extras and treats from your plate, I think the problem is that it's often like the fatty bits, which are, going to be a lot higher. The reason why fat is such a big thing to try and reduce is because protein and carbohydrate, for that matter, have about 3.5 calories per gram. But per gram of fat, it's about 8.5 or 9 calories per gram. So it's provides a significant increase in calorie, but doesn't actually give. Obviously, yes, all dogs do need a certain amount of fat within their diets to keep their skin healthy and with often a lot of the vitamins are fat soluble. So that's why we do need certain fat within our diets, but by reducing it to sensible amounts, that can be really helpful.
Yeah, fantastic.
Really, we want any diet, like dry food should be less than about 10% fat for weight loss. And if it's a wet food, just because, I won't go into the details, but because it's a much larger percentage of water, you want about 3.5 to 4% fat in a wet food or in a raw food, which is pretty much impossible to get in terms of raw. Most raw diets are 20% plus, unfortunately, in terms of dry matter, which is just you're on a hiding to nothing, really, because yes, it's high in protein, but the fat level just counteracts the benefits of that, and often having a percentage of carbohydrate for a dog that's overweight in the diet can actually be really helpful, because part of those carbohydrates are the fiber, which can really help with gut health, particularly large bowel gut health, and help with that gut fill, so that your dog feels fuller for longer.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess kind of to kind of finish up, because that's that's a great run through of diet. It can be quite a lonely journey, and it can be frustrating for people, and it takes that time as well. It would be great if it was overnight, but 3 weeks for a lot of cases is going to be a very optimistic, ideal, optimal situation, and you're going to be looking, like I say, 6 to 12 months plus. We've got a lot of support out there within, I guess, the veterinary field. Veterinary clinics are often running weight loss clinics. The nursing.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. It can sometimes be a bit overwhelming, especially if you're going in just for, if you're just, like I was saying, just looking at the scales and the weight on the scales, and I've been doing so hard this month and it's just gone up rather than gone down. So don't get disheartened with that. So sometimes actually places for regular weighing could be really useful. As long as you put your blinkers on and don't go to the checkout in the pet store, because that's where they put all the really high value, low. Oh, that's the other thing in terms of treats and thinking that your dog needs them. The regulations for what they can put into treats is, it doesn't even have to be nutritional of benefit. They can put anything in there, basically. Put your blinkers on, but pet food store can be really useful. A bit stressful for your dog, maybe, to go and be weighed. You can weigh them if they're less than, 15 kilos. You can put them in your hands and weigh them at home every month or so. And really, you want to be checking their weight if they're on a weight loss diet at least every 2 weeks, just so that if what you're doing is appropriate. But actually, what we concentrate more within the free Facebook that I run is more the fun around the weight loss and the stories behind, how they got there, but also different enrichment that you can do. And actually, a lot of it is not just, yes, it's about the diet you choose, but it's actually about being consistent. Just like us, it's not buying the gym membership that gets you fit and thinner. It's actually going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, which is much harder than just, buying the food is one thing, but it's actually, okay, you're in springtime over there, but once the clocks change and you haven't got as many daylight hours, it can be very hard to motivate yourself out in the rain and the wind to get out and do the hours. So I've just recently run a squat challenge for people and dogs within my group to actually get to those exercises that you can do at home: sit to stand, sit to lie down. Doing that 5 or 10 times each and every day, just before your dog has their dinner. That can be getting them, more physically active. That can really help. Those not necessarily, you don't necessarily think of it as, it's not really exercise, because it's just a game that you're playing with your dog. But it's those sorts of things. And in humans, they've shown walking up and down the stairs can actually significantly reduce your risk of heart disease, rather than just those general levels of activity that you do, not necessarily just thinking about and the reason why I try and give people hope to say these are the things you can do is because so many people come to me with their dog already having had this injury of that leg. They can't, they get sore if they do too many walks. But there are things you can do. And once you get the weight loss started, it's often, yes, it might take 6 weeks to reach your target weight, but often those changes that you see in terms of mobility come within sort of 4 to 6 weeks. So then it becomes then much easier to maintain. But it's just being consistent in those initial phases to actually get things started that can make the big difference.
Yeah, once you get that ball rolling and you've got the motivation, you set that routine. But I love that that running analogy, because it also makes me think, well, it's hard when it's raining and it's dark, but if you have someone who you run with who's relying on you to be there, you'll drag yourself out on a more miserable night than you would if it was just yourself. And so it's good to then have this Facebook group or whatever support it is that you've got as an accountability partner, if you like, to help keep that motivation high and all that kind of thing. So I guess with that in mind, Dr. Carolyn, where can people go, if they are interested in learning more about this and all of that support and the resources that you're able to offer them?
So I'm Caroline Taylor, but also known as Dr. Caroline, the Slim Pet Vet. So I have a business page on Facebook, and I run a free Facebook group called Slimline Canine, Slim Solutions for Overweight Dogs. And in there, in terms of accountability, each and every month, we have the opportunity for you to post pictures of your dog, and you can do from those images, from those photos, a body condition score. So at least you know where you're starting from. And it can then give you an idea of what your ideal dog's weight should be, what your dog's ideal weight should be. And then you'll know from that how much you should be feeding them. And then from there, if you're ready to learn a little bit more, I also have a website called slimpetvet.co.uk. And there you'll get blogs that I write each month. There's a forum on there. There's a specific guided 12-week program to help you from 0 to, in those first critical phase of getting them to lose the weight. We talk about one of the really tricky things could be not only getting them to lose weight, getting them to their ideal weight, but actually getting them onto that maintenance diet, because often they then yo-yo back up again. So that can be a really important phase. And there's also on there things like calorie calculators. So you put in your dog's current weight, you put in your dog's body condition score, and then from there, it gives you exactly how many calories they need per day, because this can vary, obviously, per dog and per breed. But it goes on it works out your dog's ideal weight. It tells you how long it will take you to get them to their ideal weight, how many treats in terms of calories they can have. Because if usually, it's between sort of 100 and 150 calories. You can then say, right, I can give them cheese today, but they can have, this amount. If they're having carrot on this day, they can have this amount. So you can vary it each day, but okay, that's how many extras they're allowed. So that can be a really good way of looking. Yeah, so that's how people can find me there online and find out more.
Fantastic. I'll leave all those links in the show notes as well. So if you look at the bottom of the podcast or video or whatever it is that you're watching or listening to this, then go and head over, check out all of Dr. Carolyn's fantastic information. And thank you so much for your time today. It's it's been great to actually talk a whole episode about obesity and weight loss and things, because like I say, I mention it all the time, but it's important to recognize it for the importance that it has in our pet's life and well-being. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
So nice, Alex, to meet someone as passionate as I am about this creeping silent epidemic that is out there, unfortunately, for our pets. That is it should be so simple to treat, but unfortunately, just like for us, it's something you need to really dedicate yourself to for a period of time to know that then, you're giving your dogs all those extra years of freedom from pain and have them as a puppy again.
Helping your pet live the happy, healthy life they deserve.
I just loved that conversation with Dr. Caroline. She brought so much knowledge, so much passion, and really, I think, spoke very clearly about the key action steps that are available to everyone, no matter where you are in that journey, whether you're trying to prevent your younger dog, your puppy, from becoming overweight in the first place, or whether you are struggling to get your dog or cat to lose weight. She really brings a lot of clarity, I think, to the diet choices, to the exercise, to giving treats, and many other factors in a weight loss journey. Now, because this is a favourite topic of mine, if you like, there are plenty of other resources that I will include in the show notes. There is certainly a dedicated podcast episode that I'll link to where I am talking about weight loss strategies specific to cats. There is a conversation about Edie the pug and how Edie's weight loss journey went, and her owner Kelly talks with great clarity about the challenges that she faced, but also the benefits to Edie's health that were incredibly apparent as she was going on this journey. So I'd encourage you to head over to the full show notes at callthevet.org to check out all of those links, those resources and more. And please, I beg you, take action on this information, even if it is simply performing the hand test on your dog and your cat so that you can be sure that they are in fact their healthiest weight. And then once you've done that, I would love it if you could share this episode on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, in a WhatsApp message with your friends and family who you feel will benefit from hearing this message, from getting this information, so that their pets can live the full and happy life that they want for them. Because that is really what my mission is here at Our Pets Health on the Call the Vet show, is to improve the overall health of the pet population, no matter where you're from, no matter what resources you have, and no matter what your background is. So I hope that I can provide that from you, and I'm really delighted for you to be on this journey together with me. So with that in mind, I'll be chatting to you in the next episode of the Call the Vet show. And until then, I'm veterinarian Dr. Alex. Take care.
That's it for this episode of the Call the Vet show. Be sure to visit callthevet.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. We'll see you next time.